So let's do a little assessment of this little mini bike and see what work has to be done. Okay, so if we start with the tires and wheels, well, they're in darn good shape. Those are aluminum. Tires look fresh. Nice bushings and spacers. Everything looks good there. Same thing on the rear. Looks pretty good. Here it's got a Earhart mechanical disc brake. It's got some spacers in there. Okay, the frame looks pretty good. It's a little bent up here, and it's a little out of square, just a little bit. Both foot pegs are kind of smashed down a little bit, but it's straight, so that'll have to be worked on. The most glaring problem is the fact that if that frame is sitting flat on that block, it's sitting a little sideways. It's almost level, but this welded piece here, this tube, is cockeyed to these two pieces. So if you can see it, the whole fork setup is out of plumb. So that's the major work that has to be done on the chassis, on the frame. Engine wise, well, basically I'll take the whole thing apart, clean it up, put it back together, rebuild everything I can, you know, carburetor wise, clean out the tank. This is a 2-horse. And from the little bit of research I've done, these came with 3-horse motors, I believe. I'll learn more as I get into this. So if I can't find a 3-horse, or I find out that it's a 2, that's what I'll end up doing, is sticking with this motor. This particular clutch is just on there to hold the chain in place. That clutch over there is a decent one. Okay, so I think I'll take it apart. Got to get the wheels off, take the motor off, and then I can commence working on it. Okay, I've been taking this thing apart, got the wheels and tires off, and the engine. So I was looking at these, how nice they are. They're like brand spanking new. And these spacers are nice too, and a grade 8 bolt. So I'm real pleased with these. Tires, brand new, still haven't really been used. Sprocket, same thing, appears to be new. So I'm happy with that. The engine, I'm going to put a little fuel in it, see if I can get it to pop before I take it apart. But in essence, I'll disassemble it. I believe the engine has been gone through internally, but I won't know till I get in there. We'll see if it looks nice and clean. So I'm looking forward to taking that apart, getting it all painted and put back together. Now on the frame here, the forks were bent. When I got them off and really got to eyeballing them up, they were pretty tweaked. So I focused on getting them straight in the same plane. The handlebars are the same distance apart, and the drop on each side is the same. And then they both angle forward at the same angle. So it took me about a half hour of bending and tweaking and pushing and pulling, but I got the forks nice and true. Now the frame, that's a different story. It is definitely out of square, and the problem is right here with these two tubes. They should be flush or even on the same plane, but they're not. This tube is back a little bit, and when I look at those cross rails and I start eyeballing it up, sure enough, you can see that it's off just a little bit. So, and then the other problem is this tube. If you notice right here, it's narrow and it's wide here, so this is canted. So that's just throwing this whole thing off. You can see it here. It's just all out of square because of this tube. So unfortunately, I'm going to grind that weld, cut it off, clean up the tube, clean up the frame. Then I'll go to tweaking on the frame until I get these two right here flush and on the same plane. That'll create a nice cradle for this tube to sit in, and of course I want that to be perfectly plumb when I tack it in and weld it. So, alright, so that's what I'm going to work on next, is that getting that tube off of there. Okay, this is going to be a nice bike. Alright, I clamped this frame down to the table here, and I'm going to use my grinder to see if I can be successful at this. Put a little chalk mark there. Now if this doesn't prove out to work, you know, because I'm trying not to damage the tubing here, I'll try my Sawzall next, but I'll try the grinder first, see what that gets me. Alright. Okay, I used the disc to kind of carve away at it. Thinned out the metal pretty good. But I can't get in there any deeper with this grinding wheel, so I think I'll use the Sawzall now and try to cut away at it. Maybe I can break it off once I get it a little bit thinner. Sawzall seems to be working. Just take me a little bit to get down through there. Okay, so I'm taking the bolt here and I'm putting some pressure on it. Yeah, it's starting to come. Okay, I'm going to set the camera down and finish this. Okay, I was successful getting the tube off. I need to clean it up. It's kind of warm. Looked like it was a decent weld. But I don't know if you can see it, but the problem is right here. See, this tube is further ahead than this tube. And it's put the frame out of square. Okay, I'm going to clean these tubes up and see what I have. Alright, so far so good. I got the tube all cleaned up. So that's nice and fresh. And then I cleaned the weld off here. Needs just a little bit more work there, but this is pretty rough. I'm going to work that down a lot smoother. Okay. When I get this whole thing straightened out, I'm going to put it in the bead blaster over there and get all the rust off of it. So here you can see real well how this tube is ahead of this tube. This frame must have taken a hit at some point. Either pushed this back, or I don't know exactly how it happened. But if you sight down this line here to that crossbar over there, you can see, I don't know if you can see it if I hold it straight. See, it's out of square. Let's see if I can get this. Anyway, it looks about as much out of square as this does right here. So I'm going to go to finessing this thing, see if I can square that up. We'll see. With that plate there, it might be a little tough. Alright, well this has been a bit of a challenge. I was pushing and bending, and I had it in the vise. I worked it with a small sledge. I used a pry bar. I took a break for a while, but in the final analysis I got them to even up. So I'm feeling better about that. And then the tube sits in there real nice, and I can get the angle right and get it plumb. It's interesting about these old mini bike frames, you know, as I'm going over this thing, I'm looking at real close, and it looks like it might have broke apart, I don't know what, but there's several welds on this thing. I think I know, I think I can tell where the factory weld is, but there's 1 or 2 or 3 other spots where I can tell it's been welded on. So anyway, I'm happy with it now. I've got it straight. Now I'll clean up the joints where I'm going to weld, get them nice and smooth, and then figure out how I'm going to hold that tube just right. So before I took this thing apart, I made this little plate here with this little angle that determined the height of that tube and the angle that it set on the frame, because I thought that looked alright. So I have a couple little reference lines here, so I clamped that on. So now, if I put the tube here and rest it at that angle, right there is the correct height and angle. So I'll just have to make sure I get it plumb. Yep. I think I can get that back on there where it belongs. Alright. This is shaping up. At this point I'm doing a little dry fitting here just to see. So I have it at the angle and the height. I have a little clamp there. And I've looked at it from every direction. Eyeballed this thing up pretty good. And I think it's plumb. Maybe I'll mess with it a little bit longer. Okay. Little by little I'm getting quite a collection of tools pulled out here. But I am making progress. So I've got these smoothed out pretty good. So I gave this frame degreasing, gave it a bath, and now it's ready for the bead blaster. See what that gives me. And it's funny, looking at this frame, these are, looks like little rust pits, probably from being under the seat, moisture. This little frame tells a story. Also, it used to be red and black, so I don't know what color it started life as, probably red. Alright, on to the bead blaster. Alright, so I ran this frame and the forks through the bead blaster. I squeezed them into the cabinet. It was a little snug in there and I had a little trouble getting to every single surface. But in general, it turned out pretty good. It's clean. The forks, not bad. I couldn't get everywhere because I just couldn't reach. They were tight in there. So I've been looking at this tube here, and if I put the bolt in there, it's kind of sloppy. So as it turns out, in one of the drawers I had some of these plastic ones. You guys are familiar with those. They slip in there. This appears to be probably medium wall. I don't know for sure. But it just so happens that these little plastic bushings take up the slop, so that's pretty good. And then the spring had quite a bit of dirt and paint on it, so I wire brushed that, and that looks fresh. But those of you who've been around a while, you know that these little plastic bushings, they're basically worthless. They don't hold up worth a darn. But these would hold up much better, and these little flange bushings, 5/8 ID, 3/4 OD, they fit in here just perfect, no slop. Shoot, I bet there isn't 1 or 2 thousandths there, so that's good. So I went hunting some tubing. This is 1-inch tubing, which fits the diameter of the flange, and then I have to deburr it, but this will fit in there. So I think they call this, I don't know what they call this, 14 gauge or something, 1 inch. But that piece right there cost me $5. And so I'm going to use my lathe to cut this and face it. So I'm going to make up a little tube and see how it works. See if it looks like it would be okay. And not deviate too much from the original, but be a vast improvement. Alright, let's go over it. Okay, I'm going to cut a piece of this tubing. I'm going to face it off first, and then these little bushings fit inside of here. So I'm going to chamfer the inside edge a little bit, and then we'll cut it off. and face it to length. So okay, so I used a parting tool and I cut it off and then I faced it. Then I chamfered the inside edges. Then I filed the outside edges. And then I had to file a little bit inside, but I have these now to where it is a nice fit. Nice press fit. And then of course this fits in there perfect. I mean, that is nice. Okay, and then the spring. So you can see the difference in the size. Let's see here. So I'm thinking that's an improvement over the original. The big question is, should I put this on or stay with stock? Well, we'll see. That looks alright, I think. And it'll definitely be better for long-term use anyway. Okay, so continuing on, step by step, get this thing fixed up. Here's what the tubes and bushings look like in the forks. And here I have it just mocked up, resting in place, what it might look like when it's done. So I think I'm going to try to get this motor to pop, see if I can get it running before I take it apart. It looks like everything's there. I need to put some oil in it. Feels like it's got good compression. Choke works. It's a little dirty in there. I could clean it up a little bit. I have to check the needle. Throttle has a little spring on it, so that's good. It smells good inside the tank. It's not rotten. It evidently has been drained, so that's good. The tank looks nice and clean. And I know it has spark because I was messing with it and shocked myself. Doesn't have a muffler yet. So let's see if I can get her to run. I'll have to clamp it down. See what I can get going here. Okay, I got to put some oil in it. Okay, that looks good enough. Yeah, it's right there. Okay, let's see. Next I gotta clean the carb. Okay, so let's check this needle here. Half, 1/2, 1 3/4 turns in, or out from stop. Man, that looks nice. Nice and clean. Alright, no point in messing with that. I don't know what the setting is, truthfully, the static setting. But 1 1/2, 1 3/4 sounds pretty good. Okay, so there's the quarter. Half, 1 1/2. Okay, so gotta get this cleaned up in here. A little bit of lacquer thinner. I got some carb cleaner I'm going to shoot here in a minute, but this is just basic dust and grease. Doesn't look too bad down in there considering. Alright, let me get some carb cleaner here. Okay. Okay, I'd say that's clean enough. Everything looks good in there. Just have a little surface dirt, needle's clean. Okay, let's put some gas in it. So I always burn in any small engine mini bikes, little Honda CT70s. I use premium gas, and then I always put a little octane boost. You know, this thing will do like 20 gallons, so a couple of capfuls in here, and I'm telling you, these little engines, they just love that extra octane. They get right into it. Okay, little splash of gas. Should be enough. Okay. You know, I wish I had some starting fluid. I just ran out. Guess I could just put a little, yeah, down in here. Choke. Alright, well, I'll clamp it down here. So I went online and I found a PDF. This particular engine is 60102, 60,102, and of course this is model series 60,100 and beyond. So in here is spark plug gap, point gap, carburetor settings, things like that. So I'm going to look things up here and see what it's all about. There's some variables here. You know, I have no clue if the points and condenser are in good shape or if they're even in there. I'll have to check the spark plug gap, make sure this is set right. I need to get I got an air filter, but I don't have the element. So I got to rig something there. Anyway, this is invaluable. Didn't cost me a thing. So I always like it when it doesn't cost me any money. So I popped out the plug and it's pretty carboned up, somewhat oil fouled. You know, another big variable in this engine is having the valve set right. You know, I've seen it on small engines, it's like maybe 0.002 on the intake and exhaust. So it's so close that you got to get that right on or they don't perform very well. So if I can't get it to fire, I'll check the valves. I'll probably end up taking the flywheel off. You know, it's going to come to that. So here's the air filter, air cleaner element, or container, canister. It didn't come with a screw. I've subsequently figured it out that this is the screw. Looks like maybe a 1024. But it's not long enough. Not even close. So I got to go to the hardware store, find a screw, and maybe I'll get lucky and find an element that I can maybe modify. I know they sell some down at Ace Hardware. And then while I'm out, I think I'll get a spark plug. All right. To the store. Okay, so I'm back from the store. I was able to find exactly the plug, CJ8. So that's good. And I looked it up in the book here. The plug is 25 thousandths. Points are 20, but I'm not messing with those. So, one thing about these ubiquitous Briggs and Stratton motors, you know, you can get a lot of things down at Ace Hardware or Napa. These things are just everywhere. So, 25 thousandths, let's see. Boy, that's pretty good. Yep, I can live with that. Not that one. This one. So I checked it for spark. It's got great spark. Doing fine. For about $4, I picked up a muffler. It's not the right one, but it's better than having nothing there. That'll work out temporarily. I found an air filter. It's not perfect, but it's close enough for this testing. Got me a new. It was a 1032 screw. So I'm just going to put this on. I guess it goes like that, but I'm going to put it like this so it's not right over the muffler for now. Shoot, I could have got this. Could have got this another ½ inch longer, but it'll do. Just I got to get it in there just right. Okay, that's on there. So I was reading up at least a ½ tank of gas. And like I say, it has good spark, so we're under the assumption the points and condensers are all working okay for right now. So This is a 1.5 out. I read that. So we had a 1 3/4, so I readjusted that. There's no governor set up right now. Alright, so I didn't clamp this down yet. Oh, it's popping. Alright, well I got a pop out of it, so I'm going to clamp it down. Okay. Oh, I smell exhaust. Alright. Alright, I do believe this thing is ready to run. Let's see if she'll... I had her popping a couple times. A little bit more idle, I think. Well, it's a powerhouse of a motor, all at 2 horses, but seems to be running okay. Backfiring a little bit. Imagine it could use a new key in the keyway. Timing could be a little off. Alright. At least I know it's a good motor. Alright, well, that's exciting. It cost me maybe $15 in parts and she's running, so I hate taking anything apart that I don't know if it was running. So, okay. I'd say that experiment is over with. I can move on to how this thing looks, and I'm still going to take off the flywheel and check the points though at some point. Okay. One other thing of note is I found another download online. This is like 300 and some pages, but it's Briggs from 1919 to 1981, so that covers my model. And we were talking about valve clearance earlier. So let's see, it's a 60,000 series is this engine. So 5 to 7 thousandths on intake and 9 to 11 thousandths on exhaust. So it's nice to have that and all the and how to adjust them. So manuals are very important. All right, I'm happy this thing is running. Just like to hear it run, you know? Something about an engine that's running, you know. Well, I'm sure it needs a little more tune-up work. Okay.